Good Shabbos, everyone. Guten Erev Shabbos. Erev Shabbos Vayakel Pekudei, where we bench the Chodesh, we bench the month of Nisan. We're living now in challenging times. Every single day there's new decrees, so to speak. Today we heard there's going to be a total shutdown in New York, sending a refuah shlema, speedy recovery to all those who need it. There are thousands of people who are sick with this coronavirus. So let's look at some inspiration from the Torah portion that we read. This week we read two Torah portions, Vayakel and Pekudei. Vayakel and Pekudei. As well as we take a second scroll for Parashat HaChodesh. So every single Parasha has, at the end of the Parasha, has a siman, has a mnemonic. So for example, if you look at the end of Bereshit, it's got 146 verses. The sign is Amatzia. If you look at the end of Noach, it's 153 verses. The sign is Betzalel. The end of Vayakel, it says 122 verses. The sign is Snua. So every single parsha, at the end of the parsha, has a mnemonic, has a sign indicating how many verses there are in that parsha. There's only one exception. And that exception is Parashat Pekudei, the second of the two Torah portions that we read tomorrow morning. The second one, Parashat Pekudei, has no sign, has no mnemonic. And the question is why? Out of the 53 parshiot that exist in Torah, the only one which does not have a siman, a mnemonic indicating how many verses there are in that parsha is Pekudei. Why? So let's look at, for example, Parshat Tetzaveh, which we read a few weeks ago. Parshat Tetzaveh has 101 verses. And at the end of the Parsha, it says the sign for Parshat Tetzaveh is Michael. Michael, the gematria, the numerical value of the word Michael is 101. What is the connection between Michael and the Parsha? Because remember, every mnemonic, every sign has to have a connection with the Parsha. So the connection is very simple. Parshas Tetzaveh is the only Parsha which doesn't have Moses' name. Why doesn't it have Moses' name? Because when the Jews sinned with the golden calf, and God wanted to annihilate the Jews, God said to Moses, Ki elech malachi lefanecha, my malach, my angel should go in front with you and destroy the Jewish people and rebuild the Jews from you and my angel. Malachi is the same word as Michael. My angel Michael will go with you and lead the Jewish people. And Moses was adamant. Moses said, you better forgive the Jews. Ve'im ayin, if you don't, mecheni na misifrecha shekatavta, eradicate me from the Torah portion that you have written. So Moses was adamant that Michael, that Malachi, should not be together with him. Meaning that whenever Moses' name is present, Michael cannot be present, but when Moses' name is not present, Michael could be present. So Parshat Tetzaveh, the Torah portion of Tetzaveh, is the only portion which doesn't have Moses' name. So the mnemonic, the siman for that Torah portion is Malachi, Michael. Because Michael can be present since Moses' name is not present, indicating how many verses there are, 101. So for those joining us now, the question that we're dealing with now is Parshat Pekudei. The second Parsha that we read tomorrow morning is the only Parsha that does not have Moses' name, and the question is why? So this question was asked to the Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1953 by a rabbi in Tel Aviv. And the Rebbe answered a genius answer. The Rebbe said that in his opinion, perhaps the sign for the Parsha of Pekudei was Beli Kol. And when the person in charge of editing the versions of the Chumash saw that, he said, that's not possible, because he saw written down Beli Kol Siman. In Hebrew, that means without any sign. In other words, the person editing it saw the words without any sign. So instead of printing in all the versions of the Chumash without any sign, beli kol siman, he decided just to leave it out. So there's no mnemonic, there's no sign for the end of Parshas Pekudei. But really and truly, says the Rebbe, the sign for Pekudei is beli kol, without any. What does it mean, without any? No, the guy editing it made a simple mistake. He saw the words beli kol siman, without any sign, which, by the way, the word beli kol, bet, lamed, yud, and then chaf, lamed, beli kol, is the numerical value of 92. Beli, bet is 2, lamed is 30, yud is 10, kol, chaf is 20, lamed is 30. Add that all up together, you get 92. The 92 verses in the parsha of Pekudei. But the person editing it didn't realize that. He said, instead of writing beli kol siman, meaning without any sign, just leave it out. And that's why Parshas Pekudei is the only parsha which has no sign. What is the relevance? What is the message for us? You see, we're living today with a void. I texted somebody today, I said, how was your week? He said, horrific. I have many friends, as I'm sure many others have. I have many friends who are in critical condition from this coronavirus. I have many friends who have lost jobs. I have many friends who are about to lose their jobs. Many friends who are panic-stricken, anxiety-ridden over this coronavirus. What's going to be tomorrow? How am I going to go out of my house tomorrow with this lockdown in New York City? In Israel, there's a lockdown. How am I going to survive without my synagogue? How am I going to survive without my dose of cholent? I cannot survive without cholent. My dose of whiskey at the Kiddush Club. How am I going to survive if my shul is closed down? How am I going to survive without being able to hug and kiss my friends when I greet them? So we're living in times which is a terrible, terrible void right now. There's a darkness. You see, the Lubavitcher Rebbe became Rebbe right after the greatest void of all, the Holocaust. And he took that void and he rebuilt the Jewish nation, sending shluchim, sending Chabad emissaries all over the world. If there's one yeshiva closed down, the Rebbe opened two. Open up everywhere and anywhere. Do everything you can to fill the void. Hi Daniel, watching you now. Hi, how are you? So there's a tremendous darkness. But in that void, beli kol, in that void, we find the siman, we find the sign. We utilize that void to find the sign, to find the good. You see, every single thing that happens in our lives is by divine providence. If there's a leaf that falls down from the tree, it's because God ordained that that leaf should fall down from that tree at that time. It's called hashgacha pratit, it's called divine providence. So everything, the world events, the world shutting down is all orchestrated and ordained by God. We have no idea why. But we have to find now the siman, the sign, the goodness in that void. You see, this is the idea of Kiddush HaChodesh. Kiddush HaChodesh means sanctifying the moon. It's the first mitzvah in the Torah given to the Jews as they were about to become a nation, as they were about to leave Egypt. And when Moses told the Jews, look at the moon, as opposed to the sun, is different every day. It gets bigger, 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 smaller, 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 smaller. Because there are times in our lives that we are big. There are times that we feel so good. There are times that things are amazing for us. There are times that life is so good, my livelihood is so good, everybody's healthy, Kanai Nahara. And then there are times that are tough. There are times that as a nation, we are in Egypt, we are slaves for 210 years, specifically the last 86, which were bitter, and there are times that are good, that are great. King Solomon lived in one of the greatest times. 2019 for some was a wonderful, incredible, amazing year. Good Shabbos, Luris, good Shabbos. Send regards to your whole family. So there are times that are great, and then there are times that are not so good. So the idea of the moon is that even when it's not good, even when the moon wanes and becomes small, the moon will bounce back and become great and incredible and amazing and big. And that's the mitzvah of sanctifying the moon. I know there are periods in my life that are tough. periods that are very, very difficult. But I know that even though they are difficult, I will bounce back from them like the moon does every single month. So Beli Kol, what the sign in the Torah portion means, is that the Jews had a very, very rough time. They had a rough relationship with God. Why? Because they had married God. Imagine a person marries his or her spouse, and after they get married, the person betrays, has an affair 40 days later. Can you imagine how hurtful that is? An affair is hurtful at any stage, but can you imagine how much more hurtful it is 40 days after you get married? I mean, wait 20 years, 30 years. The Jews had an affair. They betrayed their God 40 days after marrying him, 40 days after the greatest revelation of godliness in human history. So God wanted to destroy them. He wanted to eradicate them. They had a very, very rocky relationship, a very rocky period. That is what it means, Beli Kol. There was a void. But what happened in Parshat Pekudei? The Jews patched up their relationship with God. The Jews said to God, I'm sorry. They gave the machzit shekel, they gave the charity, and they built the sanctuary, they built the Mishkan, and at the end of the Parsha it says that the cloud of glory, God came down to the Mishkan to reside once again with the Jews. They were able to fill the void, and their relationship became much more powerful, much more deeper, much more meaningful than it was till then. That's what the sign, the mnemonic means at the end of the Parsha. Beli Kol, within the void, find the siman, find the sign. And that's, by the way, also why in the Jewish calendar there are two heads. The Jewish calendar, the beginning of the year is Tishrei, is Rosh Hashanah. The beginning of the year, we all come to pray to God. We say to God, "Berosh Hashanah yikatevun," and Rosh Hashanah will be written. "V'yom Tom Kippur yichatemun," and Yom Kippur will be signed. Who will live? Who will die? Who will be by the plague? How many of us thought about those words of this past Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur when we recited, "Who will be by the plague"? They are in our prayers. But on the other hand, we find that the month of Nisan, the month that we are about to bless tomorrow morning, the month that we begin in a few days' time, is the beginning of the months. So the beginning of the year is Tishrei, the beginning of the month is Nisan. Why do the Jews have things so complicated? Why are there two heads of the year, the Nisan and Tishrei? And the answer is it's two different things. The month of Tishrei symbolizes the natural cycle. God created the world in a natural way. But the month of Nisan symbolizes the miraculous. God took the Jews out of Egypt in the most incredible, miraculous way during the month of Nisan. The month of Nisan, God performed miracle after miracle after miracle, starting with the blood, and then the frogs, and the lice, culminating in the makkah of the firstborn. And then afterwards he split the sea for them. Unbelievable miracles, miracle after miracle, in the desert afterwards. For 40 years they ate man, and they had miracles and miracles and miracles. So Nisan symbolizes God shattering the world. Miracles. Tishrei symbolizes the natural. And as Jews living in this world, we have both these ideas together. On the one hand, we follow the natural order, the natural cycle of things. But on the other hand, we know that we are a nation that defies the odds. We are a nation that is miraculous by our very existence is above nature, it's miraculous. And that's why we know that at the time of this pandemic, at the time of this uncertainty, at the time of this anxiety and panic, we know that we can rely on our Father in heaven. We have a God, because Nisan means our relationship with God is above nature. It's miraculous. No matter what the world hurls at us, God will pick us up. He will save us. He will make sure we survive, persevere, despite all the odds. So, do we have any reason to be panicking and to be anxious? Absolutely not. God has a plan. Let Him just take us there. I'll give you an example. I myself am afraid of heights. I just came back from South Africa. I was on a plane for 15 hours. Can you imagine? I'm terrified of heights. Terrified. But what do? When I get on that plane, I tell myself that there's a pilot. I don't know who he is, but that pilot is here on this plane with me, and he's in control. I just got to let myself allow the pilot to take over. So too it is with us. We are on a plane, and there's a pilot to this plane. That pilot is God. So we need to just sit back, relax, enjoy the ride. God is in control. He's steering us to some place where we don't know what, where, who, but God is in control. And that's what it means, Nisan. Nisan is the month of miracles. Nisan is the relationship between us and God, is something that is above nature. You know, the story is told of this man called Akiva. Akiva lived in this Ukrainian town, this small little shtetl. And one day he had a burning desire to go to the land of Israel. And so he packs up his bags, says goodbye to all his friends in this tiny Ukrainian town, and he goes to Israel. The people in the Ukrainian town, they would love to know how he's doing, what's going on with him, but they have no idea. And anyway, a couple of months later, you know, in those days, there's no Facebook, there's no WhatsApp, so they have no idea what he's doing, what's up with him. But a couple of months later, lo and behold, who shows up? This guy, Akiva. And the town is like, oh my God, that's amazing. He's back. But he doesn't breathe a word. He doesn't say anything about why he's back. He just tells them stories of the Western Wall and the Kivrei Tzadikim, the graves of the righteous people. He tells them all about it, but nothing more than that. Anyways, what happened is, after a while, a few months later, the person is on his deathbed, and he summons the Chevra Kadisha to his room, to his, and he tells them he's about to die, and he tells them, listen, I'm sure you guys are curious to know why I left, why I came back, and here it is, I'm going to tell you the story. He said many years ago, he had the custom every single year to travel to the great and holy Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev to spend the holiday with him. One year, when he gets to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak from Berditchev, but it's a Sunday morning and there's a big commotion going on in the rabbi's house. Turns out, there was a man who had a lot of money, about 1,000 rubles, which was a fortune at that time. And he was in a certain inn, and the local innkeeper, whatever, he basically lost the money, and he was adamant somebody has stolen his money. So he came to the great rabbi and he said, somebody stole my money, and you could see this man's devastated. It wasn't really his money, it was money that he borrowed from investors, and he would not only be ruined, not only would his family be ruined, but all his investors, and he would be in debt, his entire life would be in shambles. So Rabbi Levi Yitzchak from Berditchev asked him, do you suspect anybody? Is there anybody you think that has stolen your money? And he said, I suspect the maid in the inn. That girl is the one, I'm certain she stole my money. So the rabbi summons the maid. And the maid, he asks her, did you steal this man's money? She said, absolutely not. I did not steal his money. And an argument ensues where the victim says she is the one who stole my money, and the maid is adamant it wasn't hers. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak sums up the situation. He kind of believes the maid, but he says, if there's anybody here in this room who will give me the money, give me 1,000 rubles to pay back this person, I promise him a share in the will to come. So this man Akiva was there. He goes up to the rabbi and he says, will you give it to me in writing that I will have a share in the will to come? And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak says, absolutely, yes, I will. And so the man takes out of his pocket 1,000 rubles. It was very, very difficult for him to give over 1,000 rubles. Very difficult. But he gave it over. And he said, here's the money. And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak took out a note. And he said, on the note, written down, hi Alison, nice to see you all the way from Aspen. And he puts in the note and he says, open up the gates of heaven for this person. And he tells the man, don't tell anybody of this until the day you die. The day you die, give this to the Chevra Kadisha and tell them to put this note in your grave. So the man gives over 1,000 rubles and he takes the note. The next day, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Mibarditchev summons over this man Akiva and he tells him, you should know that somebody this morning came to me and he said, I stole the 1,000 rubles, but I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed of it. But I was so inspired by this person who gave over the 1,000 rubles and it wasn't really his, but here is the 1,000 rubles back and I'm so sorry for stealing it. So the rabbi says, give me back the note and I'll give you back the 1,000 rubles. So Akiva says, I'm sorry, I did the mitzvah. I have the note is mine. And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak was so happy. He said, I'm very happy with that. And so Akiva is now on his deathbed. This is the story he told them. And he says to them, you're curious to know what Israel after I emigrated? You should know that when I went to Israel, I made a mistake. I made the crazy mistake that I forgot this note right here in this Ukrainian town. And so even though I emigrated to Israel and I made it my life's mission and I went around there and I was so happy, I knew that I was coming back. And right away I came back. I found the note in one of the books in the base medrash in the local shul. And here it is. Right over here, please bury me with this note. And the next day the person died, the Chevra Kadisha buried him with the note which said, open up the gates of heaven for the bearer of this note. My dear friends, the message from this story is incredible. One of the greatest things we could do is to help one another. Especially during this time when there's a void. Like I explained previously, there's a void, there's a hole, there's a deep hole. We are all full of panic and full of anxiety. What is the calling of this hour? What should we do now? We should help each other. Help each other. Hi, Mayan. Help each other as much as possible. Let's do everything in our power. I know we're in quarantine. I know we're in isolation, total lockdown from Sunday. But let's do everything in our power to help one another. If there's somebody you know who needs help, call him or her up and help them. You don't need to be there in person to help them. You can help over the phone with an inspiring word, with a lesson of Torah. Share inspiration, share something good, share goodness and kindness. This is the Tzav Hasha'ah. This is what all of us need to be involved in now. With the onset of social media and WhatsApps and boom, my WhatsApp beams and boops every single minute of every single day. I leave it alone for half an hour and I have 200 messages. But with the advent of WhatsApp and social media, you could reach out to people across the world. You could reach out to them, ask them how they are doing. Inquire as to what they need. Give charity in this time of need. And Bezrat Hashem, we will fill this void. So to sum up again, those of you who are just joining, you can watch the whole shiur from the beginning. I'm going to post it now on Facebook. Beli kol, the void is the siman. Shabbat shalom, my dear friends. Enjoy. And have a great Shabbos in isolation. Enjoy this Shabbat where you don't have social media and you could just be alone with your family. When you have your children or your loved ones in front of you this Shabbat, enjoy them. Take away all the social media and the social technology and everything else and just enjoy your children. It could be that God is giving us the greatest blessing of all by doing this coronavirus. It's back to the basics. As I explained in the lesson this week, what's our fancy cars worth? What are our private planes worth? What is our money worth when we are quarantined at home? Absolutely nothing. It's worth nothing. So back to the basics, back to what truly counts in life. Our loved ones, our family, our God, our Torah. Let's inspire ourselves. Shabbat Shalom.